This is our 14th lesson in this series, and today's lesson is about clause. In this lesson we would learn what a clause is and its different kinds and its uses, and then at the end I'll give you an exercise to apply what you learn in this video tutorial. So first of all, let's look at the definition of a clause. It's a group of words that indicate a verb, which is predicate, and a subject, and form a sentence or a part of a sentence, and this is called a clause. Basically what it means is that it's a sentence in itself, but it becomes a part of another sentence, so that's why it is called a clause. So if it is on its own, then it's a sentence, and if it is inside another sentence, or if it joins with another sentence to make a longer sentence, then it's a clause. Now for example, it says when it rained they went inside. Okay, now they went inside is a clause. When it rained is a clause. Now these are different types of clauses. That's what we are going to look at in our next slides. But you could see that we can write the sentence they went inside without any other sentence next to it. So if we do that, then that would be a sentence. But because it is here inside this whole sentence, big sentence, to make everything one, so then that is a separate clause. That's a separate clause. Okay, what type of these clauses are, we will look at these in detail. This sentence consists of two clauses. One is the subordinate clause in red, so this one is the subordinate clause, and one is the main clause in blue, and the one here in blue is the main clause. Now if you don't understand subordinate clause or main clause, I would simply give you a very simple solution to that. A subordinate clause is an incomplete sentence, which means it cannot stand on its own. It does not give you full sense. And a main clause is a complete sentence. It can stand on its own. It can give you full sense. For example, now look at this. If you only say this bit, okay, to somebody, when it rained, and then you stop. Okay, so for example, if I say when it rained, you will be expecting me to say something else as well, because on its own it does not give you full sense. You know that there is something more to come. But if I say this sentence, they went inside, that's it. Okay, you don't need any more information to make sense. This sentence on its own is a complete sentence, so that's the main clause, means that's the complete sentence, and this is incomplete sentence. This main clause can stand on its own, can give you full sense, but this one needs this one to make sense. Okay, so the subordinate clause needs the main clause to give full sense. So that's why it is dependent on this. It is subordinate to this. You understand? So it's just like a boss and subordinate situation. For example, this is the boss. Okay, the boss can do whatever the boss likes, but the subordinate, or the person who works in the office, for example, under somebody, he or she is not independent. They have to have the permission of the boss, or they have to have recommendations from the boss to do something. They are not completely independent. They rely on somebody, but the boss does not rely on anyone. I mean, when it comes to making decisions, or when he can do or she can do whatever they want. Okay, so this is exactly the same for these clauses. A clause has a subject and a predicate. Okay, so look at that. For example, this is how a clause is made. A subject, which means the person or the thing that does something. Predicate means a verb. Or the portion of the sentence which has a verb in it, and that makes a clause. For example, a cow gives milk. A cow is the subject. Now that is the animal that is doing something, and it gives milk. Now the word gives is a verb, but gives milk is predicate, because this bit of the sentence includes a verb. So see that on its own it's a complete sentence, but when it is inside another sentence, that is known as a clause. Now in this on this slide we have some different types of clauses. Although there are other, but these are 5 major types of English clauses, which is independent clause, subordinate clause, coordinate clause, adjective clause, adverb clause, and a noun clause. Now as we discussed in our previous lesson, in the phrase lesson, that if it is an adjective phrase, it means that that phrase must have an adjective. In the same way, if it is independent clause, it means it should be a complete sentence. If it is a subordinate clause, it means it should be an incomplete sentence. If it is a coordinate clause, it means that these both clauses should be complete sentences. If it is an adjective clause, it means this clause must have an adjective in it. If it is an adverb clause, this clause must have an adverb, and same as noun clause. Okay, so their names are basically telling us everything. Let's move on to the next one and look at each one of them separately. Now the independent clause is also known as a main clause or a complete sentence, as I explained earlier. So for example, he often visits Spain because he likes its climate. Okay, now in this one, the clause in blue is the independent clause or the main clause, because it gives us a complete sense. He often visits Spain. So it doesn't need any other information, because he likes its climate. Now that gives us incomplete information. We know that something is missing because he likes its climate. Now we don't know what is its if we don't have this sentence, and we don't know what is the context of this sentence. It can stand its own. Okay, so the blue one, it does not need any other clause to complete it. He often visits Spain is a complete sentence, and it is a complete sentence in itself. So that's why it is known as the independent clause. Means it does not depend on any other sentence or any other phrase or anything to give a full sense. On the other hand, a subordinate clause is also known as a dependent clause. Okay, or this is incomplete sentence. I think this one, the incomplete one, is the best definition, because I mean, you can keep this in your mind, that in English, when you write a sentence, some portions are incomplete, some portions of a sentence are complete. The ones that are incomplete are basically subordinate clauses. So again, the same thing. The clause in red is a dependent clause because it depends on the blue one, because it does not give us full sense without this. It cannot stand on its own because he likes its climate. It doesn't make sense. It does not. It does need the main clause in blue above to complete it, and it is an incomplete sentence in itself. Okay, so that's a subordinate clause. Subordination means as a part of a sentence that needs more information, that needs a complete sentence to go with it to give us full sense. Now, a coordinate clause, on the other hand, is where you use fanboys. Okay, so fanboys, if you haven't watched my previous video about coordinating conjunctions and compound sentences, in English there are 7 conjunctions which are fanboys: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so, which make compound sentences. or which make a coordinate clause. And coordinate clauses are complete sentences. For example, I called on him, but he refused to recognize me. Okay. Now, in the above example, both clauses in red and blue are independent clauses because both can stand on their own, both are complete sentences, and both need no other clause to complete. For example, here it starts with but it has got a complete information. For example, he refused to recognize me. Okay, so, and I called on him. So this one has pronoun and this one has pronoun in the same way. So we don't know, I mean, if you look very deeply, I called on him. Okay, so this is said in a specific context. Okay, and the listener or the speaker both understand who called who. And in the same way, we have pronouns here, but he refused to recognize me. Now, he refused to recognize me, or but he refused to recognize me, is a complete sense. Okay, we don't need anything else. Okay, so this is why this is known as a coordinate clause. Why? Because it has this conjunction, and this conjunction comes from the fanboys. Okay, so fanboys are coordinating conjunctions, and if you have a sentence which has got coordinating conjunctions, then that is a coordinating clause. The next one is adjective clause. As I mentioned earlier, an adjective clause is a kind of dependent or subordinate clause that acts like an adjective and qualifies noun in the main clause. Now, the basic division, the main division is subordinating, the main clause and subordinate clause. Now, in subordinate clause, you have different types. Okay, adjective clause, noun clause. So this is one of the subordinating clause. Example of subordinating clause. For example, it usually starts with a relative pronoun. For example, who, whom, whose, which. For example, there is the mountain that we are going to climb. Now, this one is an adjective clause. There is the mountain that we are going to climb. Now, the whole bit acts like an adjective because it is describing the mountain. There is the mountain that we are going to climb. Now, this is not any mountain. This is the mountain that we are going to climb. So this bit gives us more information about this mountain. So it behaves like an adjective. For example, if I say there's the mountain which is very tall. Okay, now which thing is tall? The mountain. Okay, so anything, a word or a group of words that acts like an adjective would be an adjective clause. But at the same time, you could see that there is the mountain. It's a complete sentence that we are going to climb. Now, if I only say this thing, it is incomplete. It does not give us full sense. That's why it's a subordinate clause, the first thing. The second thing is, now, what's the function of this subordinating clause? This subordinating clause is basically qualifying or giving us more information about this mountain. So based on the function, based on its behavior, we say this is an adjective clause. The next one, the children who belong to this generation are very smart. Now, sometimes you have the main clause like that split in, apart. Basically, this is the sentence. That's the main clause. Now, if you read this without that, you will still see it makes sense. The children are very smart. Fine. But which children? Who belong to this generation? Now, if I ask you, who belong to this generation? You will say, these children. Now, this whole thing is basically telling us more about children. And children is a noun. Okay? So this thing is acting like an adjective. So that's why this is an adjective clause. Clauses in blue above are the main clauses, and the ones in the red are adjective clauses, which are describing mountain and children respectively. So that's why, and mountain and children, both of them are nouns. Any word, any phrase, any sentence that describe a noun would be adjective. word or a phrase or a clause. The next one is adverb clause. Now that you have learned adjective clause, it's very easy to understand what an adverb clause is. Okay, now an adverb clause, so first of all look at understand what is an adverb. An adverb describes or tells us more about a verb. Okay, now any sentence or any phrase or any word that describes or tells us more about a verb or an action, then that would be adverb clause or adverb phrase or adverb simply. So in this case, a clause that tells us more about an action would be an adverb clause. Okay, and also this is a subordinating clause. For example, he bakes cakes because he leaves for work every Sunday. Okay, now why does, if I ask you a question, why does he bake cakes? Because he leaves. Why does he do what? Why does he bake cakes? Because he leaves for work every Sunday. That's why he bakes cakes. Now the word bake is a verb. This whole thing, which is a subordinate clause, is describing or telling us more about cakes or the reason why somebody bakes cakes. Okay, so that one is an adverb clause. The clause in red is the adverb clause because it describes bakes, a verb, in further detail. Noun clause. Now the noun clause would be a clause which has a noun in it. Okay, a noun clause is a kind of dependent or subordinate clause that acts like a noun in a sentence. So if it is one word, that it's a noun, but if the whole sentence acts like a noun, it would be a noun clause. For example, sorry, this clause can be replaced by a noun if the sentence makes sense, then it is a noun clause, for example. Now that's very, very important to understand. Whatever you say will be used as evidence in the court. Now that is basically the noun clause, and this one, the wavy line, is the main. So I would write the main clause. Okay, this is important, that's why I'm working on this a bit more. Right, this is the main clause. Will be used as evidence in the court. Why this is the noun clause? Because if you replace the whole thing with one word, it should make sense. If you replace the whole thing with one noun, it should make sense. For example, whatever you say can be replaced by confession, recording, or pictures. For example, recording will be used as evidence in the court. Your recording maybe. Okay, your confession or confession will be used as evidence in the court. Okay, you see that? And pictures will be used as evidence in the court. You could see that this whole thing can be replaced with one word, and that one word is a noun. Okay, so whatever you say, obviously that is confession, okay, will be used as evidence. Now you could see that if we delete this thing and if we use confession here, the whole thing becomes one complete sentence. Okay, confession will be used as evidence in the court. That's a complete sentence. But this phrase was acting like a noun, acting like a subject, so that's why it is known as the noun phrase. Okay, here is an exercise for you now. What you do is you read these sentences, you underline the main clause and the subordinate clause separately, and then categorize them. I mean, you can use different colors, pens in your notebooks. So underline the main clause with a different color, or maybe you can put a straight line under the main clause. You can put a wavy line under the subordinate clause and label them. This is the subordinate clause. Then the next step or the next challenge or extra challenge is then tell or write what type of clause it is. Okay, and then you can share it with me in the comment section of this video. I hope you understand this and it does make sense to you. Thank you very much for listening and watching. I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.